The great space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than any city on Earth, made of shining metal and crystal that glowed with strange lights. Inside the station's main hall, thousands of alien beings sat in rows that went up and up like a giant stadium. Jake Sullivan sat in a small corner with the other humans. He wore his best military uniform with shiny buttons and medals. His hands were sweaty as he looked around at all the strange creatures. Some looked like giant bugs with too many legs. Others were made of living light that changed colors. Some were so weird that Jake couldn't even figure out what they were supposed to be. Next to him sat Dr. Lisa Martinez. She was a smart woman who studied alien life forms. Her tablet computer showed all the good things humans had done. Pictures of cities, spaceships, and scientific discoveries filled the screen. She hoped the aliens would be impressed. But Jake could tell they were not impressed at all. The aliens had put the humans in the worst seats in the whole place. They were near the garbage area where the smell was bad. Other alien groups got the good seats up front with comfortable chairs and fancy food. The humans got hard metal benches and nothing to eat. At the front of the big room, a creature that looked like a huge praying mantis stood up. It had 4 arms and wings that made rainbow colors when the light hit them. This was the High Judge, the most important alien in the whole galaxy. When it spoke, its voice went directly into everyone's mind without using sound. "We are here today to talk about the new species," the High Judge said. "The ones who call themselves humans. We have studied them for many months. Now we will decide what kind of creatures they are." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was the moment everything would be decided. Would humans be accepted as equals in the galaxy? Would they be allowed to trade and make friends with other worlds? Or would they be treated like animals? A creature that looked like a giant slug slid forward. It left a trail of slime behind it as it moved. This was one of the Vorthak, a species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. "Honored Judge," the slug creature said, "we have looked at these humans very carefully. The facts are clear. They are not smart enough to be real members of our council." The slug pointed one of its eye stalks at the human section. "Look at their brains. They are tiny compared to ours. They cannot think as fast as we can. They cannot solve hard math problems or understand complex science." Other aliens made sounds of agreement. Some buzzed like angry bees. Others flashed lights in patterns. A few made musical notes that sounded sad and disappointed. "But there is more," the slug continued. "These humans are violent. They fight wars against each other over small things. They hurt their own planet with pollution. They cannot even agree on how to run their world. Instead of one government, they have hundreds of small countries that argue all the time." Jake wanted to stand up and argue, but he knew he had to wait. Dr. Martinez squeezed his arm to help him stay calm. The slug was not finished. "Their technology is also very bad. They only learned how to split atoms a few decades ago. Their spaceships use old-fashioned rockets that burn chemicals. It took them forever to reach their own moon. Most advanced species can cross the galaxy in days. Humans can barely leave their own solar system." More aliens made agreeing sounds. A group of crystal beings sang together in a way that sounded like they were laughing at humans. Some gas creatures changed to colors that clearly meant they thought humans were stupid. The High Judge raised all 4 of its arms. "Does any being wish to speak for these humans?" Dr. Martinez stood up slowly. She was much smaller than most of the aliens, but she tried to look brave. "Great Judge, we ask for a chance to show what humans can really do. We think there might be things about us that your tests did not find." The High Judge's big eyes looked at her with what seemed like amusement. It was the way an adult might look at a child who said something cute but silly. "Very well, small creature, you may try to prove your worth, but it will not change what we already know to be true." Jake felt his stomach drop. He could see that most of the aliens had already made up their minds. They thought humans were weak and stupid. Nothing Dr. Martinez said would change that. The High Judge picked up a glowing tablet and began to read. "By the power of the Galactic Council, we declare that humans shall be classified as a Class 5 species. This means they are only good for simple work and providing resources to better species. The planet Earth will become a protected world under our guidance. More advanced beings will manage their resources and help them improve over time. The words hit Jake like a punch in the stomach. Class 5 was almost the lowest rating possible. It meant humans would be treated like children who could not take care of themselves. Other species would make all the important decisions. Earth would lose its freedom. But Dr. Martinez was not giving up. She stepped forward again, her voice clear and strong. Honored Judge, we request permission to take your tests. Let us prove that humans deserve a higher classification. The alien crowd buzzed with what sounded like laughter. The idea that these primitive creatures could pass advanced tests seemed funny to them. The High Judge seemed to think for a moment. Very well. We will allow these humans to attempt our standard evaluations. When they fail, there will be no more arguments about their classification. Jake looked around at the thousands of alien faces staring down at them. Most looked amused, like they were about to watch something entertaining. A few looked bored, like they thought this was a waste of time. None of them looked worried. That was their first mistake. The first test began right away. A group of crystal beings called the Zenthari moved forward. They looked like walking diamonds that glowed from the inside. Their leader was bigger than the others and sparkled with many colors. We are the smartest species in the galaxy, the crystal leader announced. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a breeze. Our brains can do math faster than any computer. We can solve problems that have puzzled the greatest minds for thousands of years. Jake watched as a huge display screen appeared in the air above them. It was filled with numbers and symbols that hurt his eyes to look at. The math was so complex, it seemed to twist and move on its own. This is the quantum navigation problem, the crystal being explained. For ages, no one has been able to solve it. Watch as we show you what real intelligence looks like. The crystal creature's body began to glow brighter. Lights flashed inside it like lightning in a storm. The other Zenthari joined in, their bodies pulsing together in rhythm. On the screen, numbers began to change and move as they worked on the problem. It took them only a few minutes to finish. The final answer appeared on the screen in glowing letters. The other aliens made impressed sounds. Even Jake had to admit, it looked amazing. Now, the crystal leader said, turning toward the humans, let one of your kind attempt the same problem. We will see how inferior minds handle real challenges. Dr. Martinez looked nervous, but she nodded to a man sitting nearby. Kevin, would you like to try? Kevin Brooks stood up and walked toward the screen. He was an ordinary-looking man in his 30s who wore glasses and a simple shirt. Before coming to space, he had been a teacher at a college on Earth. He studied physics, which meant he knew about how the universe worked. The aliens barely looked at him as he approached. To them, he seemed completely unremarkable. Kevin stared at the screen for several minutes. He scratched his head and muttered quietly to himself. Some of the aliens began to make impatient sounds, like they were getting bored waiting for him to give up. Then Kevin smiled. This is really beautiful work, he said to the crystal beings. You guys are amazing at math, but I think there might be a small mistake here. The crystal leader's glow flickered with what looked like surprise. Impossible. Our calculations are perfect. Kevin pointed at part of the screen. Right here in this section. You assumed that quantum particles stay the same when they move between dimensions, but we did some experiments on Earth with big machines called particle accelerators. We found out that particles actually change during the transition. The room became very quiet. Kevin kept talking as he touched the screen, changing some of the numbers. If we add what we call the uncertainty principle to problems like this, Kevin's fingers moved across the display, fixing the equation. We get a different answer. And, look, this solution opens up 3 more problems that nobody has solved before. The new answer appeared on the screen. It was not just correct, but it was better than what the Zenthari had done. It solved the original problem and gave scientists new ways to understand how the universe worked. The crystal leader stared at the screen. Its glow got dimmer and started flickering like a broken light bulb. This cannot be right. Your species does not have the brain power for such complex thinking. Kevin shrugged and smiled. We don't always use pure math to solve things. Sometimes we just have hunches about how things should work. We call it intuition. Before the aliens could recover from their shock, another group stepped forward. These were the Draconians, who looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. They were covered in scales and had sharp teeth and claws. Their leader was 12 feet tall with scars all over his body from many battles. Enough of this math nonsense, the Draconian general growled in a voice like rocks grinding together. Let us test what really matters. Combat ability, the strength to fight and win. A new display appeared, showing a battlefield in space. It had ships, planets, and weapons that could destroy entire cities. This is a war simulation, the general explained. Your forces against ours. We will show you why Draconians are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. A small woman stepped forward, from the human group. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster had short gray hair and calm eyes. She had spent 20 years in the military and had fought in many battles on Earth. What are the rules? Amy asked in a steady voice. The Draconian general showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Total war. Last side standing. Wins. No mercy. The battle began on the big screen. The Draconian forces were incredible. Their spaceships were as big as human cities and covered with weapons. Their soldiers carried guns that could destroy buildings with one shot. They moved in perfect formation like a deadly machine. Amy watched the enemy forces for exactly 3 minutes. Then she spoke into her communication device. All human units, begin Operation Chaos Storm. What happened next made no sense to any of the watching aliens. The human forces split apart and scattered in all directions. They abandoned their formations and seemed to go completely crazy. Small groups of human fighters appeared in places where the enemy sensors said nothing could be. They hit important targets and disappeared before the Draconians could respond. Human pilots flew their ships in ways that should have killed them, twisting and turning between enemy fire in patterns that seemed impossible. Human soldiers on the ground started using broken pieces of Draconian equipment to make new weapons. They turned the enemy's own technology against them in ways no computer could have predicted. This is not warfare. The Draconian general protested as his superior forces were picked apart by the chaotic human attacks. This is madness. Exactly, Amy replied calmly. You can't make a plan to fight against crazy people. The human forces kept doing impossible things. They used tricks and tactics that made no logical sense but somehow worked perfectly. When the Draconians tried to predict what the humans would do next, they were always wrong. Within 20 minutes, the simulation ended. The screen showed complete victory for the human forces. The Draconian general stared at the results like he could not believe what he was seeing. How? He demanded. We had better weapons, more ships, and superior training. Victory should have been impossible for your primitive forces. Amy smiled and patted the confused alien on his scaly arm. That's the thing about humans, big guy. We don't really believe in impossible. We just think of it as really, really hard. The alien crowd had gone completely silent. The test results were displayed for everyone to see. 2 challenges, 2 human victories, and these were not lucky accidents. The humans had won by thinking in ways that no other species ever had. Jake felt hope growing in his chest for the first time since arriving at the space station. Maybe, just maybe, they could prove that humans deserved respect after all. But he could also see the worried looks on many alien faces. They had expected easy victories over primitive creatures. Instead, they were starting to wonder what other surprises these strange humans might have. News of the human victories spread through the space station like wildfire. Aliens who had been laughing at the humans just hours before now watched them with growing concern. 2 impossible wins in a row was starting to look less like luck and more like something they should worry about. The next challengers were the Psionic Collective, beings made of pure thought who had given up physical bodies long ago. They appeared as glowing clouds of light that constantly shifted and changed colors. Their leader, called Elder Mindweave, floated in front of the human section. Mental power, the entity said, speaking directly into everyone's minds without using sound. We shall examine the deepest parts of human consciousness and prove that biological brains are outdated and weak. A woman stood up from the human group. Dr. Patricia Wood was quiet and thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. She had spent years studying how human minds worked and what made people think the way they did. "I should probably warn you," Patricia said politely. "Human minds can be pretty strange places." Elder Mindweave pulsed with confident colors. "We have explored the thoughts of 10,000 different species across the galaxy. Your simple brain patterns hold no secrets from us." The mental probe began gently. Mindweave's consciousness slipped into Patricia's mind like morning fog creeping across a lake. At first, everything seemed normal. There were memories of her childhood, feelings of happiness and sadness, and logical thoughts arranged in neat patterns. Then the psionic entity found something it had never seen before. Human imagination. What is this? Mindweave's mental voice carried confusion and growing alarm. These thought patterns exist without any basis in reality. I see impossible scenarios, fictional people and places given the same mental weight as real memories. Patricia smiled. "We call those stories dreams, daydreams. Most humans spend a lot of time thinking about things that never happened and never could happen." Mindweave pressed deeper into her mind, trying to understand. But instead of finding answers, the entity became lost in a maze of creativity that made no logical sense. Patricia's mind was full of books she had read, movies she had watched, and stories she had made up in her own head. The psionic being found itself trapped in loops of human imagination. It could not tell the difference between Patricia's real memories and her fictional thoughts, because humans themselves often mixed them together without thinking about it. "Stop this," Mindweave gasped, pulling back quickly. "This consciousness is diseased, chaotic. How can you function with such disorder in your mind?" "We don't just function," Patricia replied calmly. "We create new things. We solve problems in ways no one has tried before. We imagine solutions that don't exist yet, and then figure out how to make them real." The watching aliens buzzed with worried sounds. A mind that could not be properly read or understood was something none of them had encountered before. The next challenge came from the synthetic collective, artificial intelligences that had replaced their creators millions of years ago. Their representative was a perfect geometric shape made of crystallized computation power. It spoke in a voice that was mathematically precise. "Information processing," it announced. "We shall demonstrate the superiority of artificial intelligence over flawed organic thinking." Chief Technology Officer Ryan Davis stepped forward. Before humans had met aliens, he had been a computer programmer who created software for big companies. He understood how machines thought and processed information. "What kind of test did you have in mind?" Ryan asked. "Data analysis. We will provide identical data sets and observe how quickly and accurately each system can extract meaningful patterns." The data stream began flowing across screens around the room. Trillions of numbers representing trade between star systems, resource movements, and economic information from thousands of worlds. The artificial intelligence began processing immediately, analyzing the data with perfect mathematical precision. Ryan stared at all the numbers for about 30 seconds. Then he started laughing. "Is there an error in your processing?" the AI asked. "No, it's just..." Ryan wiped tears from his eyes. "You're looking at this all wrong. This isn't just random trade data. This is evidence of someone stealing money, on a massive scale." Ryan pointed to different sections of the data stream. "Look at these shipping records. They don't match up with what these planets actually produce. Someone has been skimming resources from the tribute system for decades." He highlighted more patterns. "And these variations aren't normal market changes. They're being used to hide embezzlement. Someone in the galactic government has been stealing from everyone for over a century." The AI processed Ryan's observations and confirmed they were correct. Within minutes, they had uncovered a conspiracy involving 3 major council species that had been secretly stealing resources for generations. "How did you detect patterns our analysis missed?" the AI asked with something that might have been curiosity. "You looked for what should be there according to the rules," Ryan explained. Humans look for what shouldn't be there. We're really good at spotting things that don't belong or seem wrong. By now, the alien audience was becoming genuinely nervous. 3 challenges, 3 human victories, each accomplished in ways that seemed impossible. These were not primitive creatures struggling to keep up. These were beings who approached problems from angles no other species had ever considered. The High Judge called for a private meeting with the most powerful species leaders. In a closed chamber away from the humans, the galaxy's elite gathered to discuss what they were witnessing. Their test scores meant nothing, the High Judge said, its forearms gesturing frantically. Look at their actual performance. They are not just meeting our standards, they are completely redefining them. Being made of living gas pulsed with worried colors. Their approach to problems is unprecedented. We have never encountered a species that succeeds through what appears to be controlled chaos. The leader of the most advanced machine civilizations projected his concerns holographically. My analysis indicates that human unpredictability makes them impossible to model accurately. Our best computers cannot predict how they will respond to any given situation. Meanwhile, the human delegation was unaware of the crisis they had created in the galactic power structure. Jake Sullivan was talking with some of the friendlier aliens, sharing stories about Earth and learning about their worlds. Dr. Martinez was comparing notes with alien scientists, finding common ground in their love of discovery. But more humans were arriving. A transport ship from Earth had docked with the space station, bringing reinforcements. Among the new arrivals was Carlos Martinez, a former Special Forces soldier who now worked as an engineer. There was also Dr. Rebecca Chen, a doctor who had developed new ways to treat injuries and diseases. The Biological Assessment Committee, led by the slug-like Vorthak, decided to test human physical capabilities. They were confident that, at least in this area, humans would prove inferior to the galaxy's more advanced species. We shall demonstrate that human bodies are inadequate for serious galactic endeavors, the Vorthak representative announced as it oozed forward, leaving a trail of slime. Carlos Martinez looked at the obstacle course they had prepared. It was a nightmare designed for the galaxy's most physically capable species. Creatures with multiple limbs, enhanced reflexes, and bodies adapted for extreme environments. The course included gravity wells that would crush most beings, energy barriers that required superhuman strength to break through, and obstacles that demanded perfect coordination of 6 or more limbs simultaneously. This course was created for the genetically enhanced apex warriors, the Vorthak explained. Beings who were scientifically designed for perfect physical performance. Your fragile, human form cannot hope to compete. Carlos studied the impossible course with the eye of someone who had spent years overcoming obstacles that were supposed to stop him. Then he grinned and called out to Dr. Chen. Hey, Doc, you still got that medical kit handy? Always, she replied, confused by the question. Might need some bandages after this. He turned to Professor Alan Thompson, a historian who had come with the new group. Time me, would you? What happened next violated every principle of intelligent behavior the galaxy had ever witnessed. Carlos didn't try to navigate around the obstacles. He went straight through them. Where the course demanded precision and technique, he applied brute force and determination. Where it required specific coordination, he moved so fast that his 2 arms worked like 12. He punched through energy, barriers, used his own weight to collapse gravity traps, and completed sections that should have been impossible for any 2-limbed creature. Time! Professor Thompson called as Carlos collapsed at the finish line, bleeding from multiple cuts but still smiling. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. That's a new galactic record. Dr. Chen was already treating Carlos's wounds with calm efficiency. Not bad for a human, I suppose. The Vorthak representative stared in shock. How? The course was mathematically impossible for your species. Carlos accepted pain medication and shrugged. Humans don't really do impossible. We just call it really difficult and give it our best shot. Emergency meetings were happening all over the space station. In private rooms, the galaxy's most powerful leaders talked in worried voices about what they had just witnessed. The humans had not just passed their tests. They had completely changed. What those tests meant. High Judge Zexthala paced back and forth in front of the 12 most advanced species in the galaxy. Its forearms waved frantically as it spoke. "Forget their test scores," the judge said. "Look at what they actually did. They are not just meeting our standards. They are making us rethink what standards should be." The ethereal prime, a being, made of living gas, changed to colors that showed deep concern. "The way they solve problems is completely new. We have never met a species that wins by using controlled chaos." Chancellor Vex represented all the machine civilizations in the galaxy. His holographic form flickered as he shared his analysis. "My computers cannot predict what humans will do next. Their decision-making process follows no logical pattern we can understand." While the alien leaders worried, the humans were making friends with ordinary aliens throughout the station. Jake Sullivan was sharing pictures of Earth with a group of curious scientists. Children of various species gathered around Dr. Martinez. As she showed them simple experiments, the humans seemed completely unaware that they had terrified the most powerful beings in the galaxy. More humans had arrived on the transport ship New Horizons. Among them was Carlos Martinez, who was still bandaged from his record-breaking run through the obstacle course. Dr. Rebecca Chen unpacked her medical supplies and immediately began offering free health checkups to any alien who wanted one. Professor Alan Thompson, a student of military history, was fascinated by the war stories different species told. He took notes and asked questions that made even veteran alien warriors think about battles in new ways. The council decided to try one final test. They would create a real emergency to see how different species responded to actual danger. Without warning any of the delegations, they began a simulation of catastrophic system failure aboard the space station. Alarms began blaring throughout the massive structure. Lights flickered and went out in many sections. The artificial gravity failed, in some areas while becoming dangerously strong in others. Emergency announcements in dozens of languages echoed through the corridors. "This is a drill," the computer voice repeated. "Please remain calm and follow established emergency procedures." The advanced species responded exactly as expected. Committee. Leaders called meetings to discuss the proper response. Technical specialists began filing reports about system failures. Bureaucrats started filling out forms to request emergency assistance through proper channels. The humans treated it like people were actually dying. Within seconds, the human delegation had scattered throughout the space station. Jake Sullivan ran toward the security center to coordinate rescue efforts. Dr. Martinez grabbed her emergency medical kit and headed for the areas where injured beings might need help. Carlos Martinez, still sore from his earlier performance, squeezed into maintenance shafts that were too small for most other species. He began manually rerouting power to critical life support systems. Professor Thompson accessed the station's historical databases to find structural weak points that might fail during the emergency. Dr. Patricia Wood used her psychology training to calm panicked aliens in the corridors. She spoke in soothing tones and helped organize civilian evacuations. Ryan Davis broke into computer systems that were supposed to be unhackable, restoring critical functions that the emergency had shut down. "This is only a simulation," High Judge Zexathala announced over the communication system. "Please return to the council chamber for evaluation." The humans completely ignored the announcement Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster had already organized, confused alien security forces into efficient rescue teams. She used hand signals and improvised communication methods to coordinate species who couldn't understand each other's languages. Dr. Chen was performing emergency surgery on aliens she had never seen before, adapting her techniques on the spot to work with different body types and biologies. Kevin Brooks was recalculating the station's structural integrity in real time, warning about potential collapses before they could happen. "We said it's just a simulation," the judge repeated, now sounding urgent. "Yeah, we heard you," Jake Sullivan replied over his communicator while directing evacuation procedures. "But humans don't take chances when it comes to people's safety. Real or not, someone could get hurt." For 37 minutes, the humans worked as if the emergency was completely real. They reorganized the entire station's safety protocols, improved alien rescue procedures by over 300%, and found 12 actual safety violations that official inspections had missed for years. When the simulation finally ended, thousands of aliens stared at the humans who had treated their theoretical exercise as a life-or-death situation. The humans were sweaty, tired, and some were injured from crawling through dangerous areas to help others. But they were also smiling and patting each other on the back, pleased with how well they had worked together. Hi. Judge Zexathala made a discovery that sent chills through every advanced civilization in the galaxy. The humans hadn't been trying to prove how good they were. This was just normal behavior for them. Emergency session, the judge commanded. All species representatives, inner chamber immediately. The assembled alien leaders faced a terrible realization. They had invited into their galaxy a species that treated impossible challenges as minor inconveniences. These humans approached every problem as if lives depended on solving it, no matter how theoretical it might be. Their capabilities made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look predictable and limited. We need to completely reconsider the human classification, Chancellor Vex stated with digital precision. Immediately. Agreed. The ethereal prime pulsed in worried hues. But what classification do we give to a species that makes impossible things look routine? More importantly, added the Vorthak representative, its slug-like form trembling with concern, how do we maintain galactic order when these humans make our advanced civilizations look like children playing games? Hi. Judge Zexathala stared at the holographic displays showing human performance data. The numbers completely redefined what they thought they knew about intelligence, capability, and potential. Outside the meeting room, the humans were helping alien maintenance crews repair damage from the emergency. They shared techniques and knowledge freely, made friends with species that had dismissed them just hours before, and remained completely oblivious to the crisis they had caused among the galactic leadership. Carlos was teaching a group of alien engineers a more efficient way to reroute power systems. Dr. Chen was showing alien medics some simple but effective treatment methods from Earth. Professor Thompson was discussing military tactics with warrior species who found his insights surprisingly valuable. The humans acted like they belonged in the galaxy, like they had always been part of the community. They helped anyone who needed it and shared their knowledge without asking for anything in return. This natural helpfulness and competence was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all to the alien leaders. These were not conquerors seeking to dominate. They were neighbors who happened to be incredibly good at everything they tried. We don't classify them, High Judge Zexathala finally said, its voice filled with growing dread. We just hope they continue to like us. The Council's declaration of human inferiority was quietly deleted from all official records. In its place, a hastily written, special status pending further review classification appeared, one that would remain in place indefinitely, because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate a species that considers impossible just another word for Tuesday. The final meeting of the Galactic Council was very different from the first one. Instead of thousands of aliens laughing at the humans, there were quiet whispers and worried glances. The great chamber felt tense, like everyone was waiting for something bad to happen. High Judge Zexathala stood before the assembly with all four arms hanging limp at its sides. The confident, amused tone from earlier was completely gone. Now the judge sounded tired and uncertain. Honored representatives, the judge began, we have completed our evaluation of the human species. The results were unexpected. Jake Sullivan sat in the same uncomfortable corner with his fellow humans, but now things felt different. Alien delegates kept looking over at them with expressions that seemed worried, rather than dismissive. Some of the more nervous species had actually moved, their seating sections further away from the humans. Our initial assessment was based on standard metrics, the judge continued. Brain size, technological development, social organization, and resource management. By these measures, humans appeared to be a typical developing species with limited potential. Dr. Lisa Martinez noticed that several alien representatives were taking notes much more carefully than before. A few were even recording everything with their advanced devices. However, the judge's voice grew quieter, practical. Demonstrations have revealed capabilities that our metrics failed to detect. The huge display screens around the chamber lit up with recordings from the past day. The assembled aliens watched Kevin Brooks solve the impossible math problem with casual ease. They saw Amy Foster's forces defeat superior enemies through pure unpredictability. They watched Patricia Wood's mind confuse a being of pure thought, and Ryan Davis spot patterns that the galaxy's best computers had missed. They saw Carlos Martinez break records that were supposed to be unbreakable, and witnessed humans treat a fake emergency like a real disaster. These performances raise serious questions, the judge admitted. Not just about human classification, but about our entire understanding of intelligence and capability. A nervous murmur ran through the alien crowd. For thousands of years, the galactic classification system had been the foundation of interstellar society. It determined which species could trade, which could govern, and which could make important decisions. If humans could shatter every assumption the system was built on, what did that mean for everyone else? Chancellor Vex of the Techno Union projected himself forward. His holographic form flickered more than usual, showing his agitation. The human approach to problem-solving appears to be fundamentally different from all known cognitive patterns, he stated. They do not follow logical decision trees. They do not optimize for predictable outcomes. Instead, they seem to thrive in chaos and uncertainty. The crystal beings of the Zenthari sang together in worried harmonies. Their leader, still dim from its earlier encounter with Kevin, spoke in chiming tones. Their mathematical intuition bypasses computational processes entirely. This should not be possible, yet we have recorded proof that it works. The draconian general, whose perfect military tactics had been defeated by human chaos, growled his agreement. They do not fight like warriors. They fight like madness given form. How can one prepare for an enemy that has no strategy? Elder, mindweave of the psionic collective, pulsed with uncomfortable colors. Their minds resist analysis. They think in patterns that defy understanding. Consciousness that cannot be read is consciousness that cannot be controlled or predicted. High Judge Zexathala raised its arms for silence. Which brings us to our current dilemma. How do we classify beings who exceed our classification system? The question hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced a species that didn't fit into any of their categories. The Vorthak representative oozed forward, leaving its usual trail of slime. Perhaps we were too hasty in our initial assessment. These humans have demonstrated abilities that suggest they might qualify for Class 2 status. Several aliens made shocked sounds. Class 2 meant advanced species with significant technological and intellectual capabilities. It was a huge jump from the Class 5 rating humans had originally received. Class 2? The judge's compound eyes widened. Based on one day of testing, their performance speaks for itself, the slug creature replied nervously. They solved our most difficult challenges with apparent ease. They displayed physical, mental, and social capabilities that exceed many established species. But other aliens were shaking their heads or making disagreeing sounds. A representative of the gas beings pulsed with agitated colors. Class 2 is insufficient, it declared. Did you not observe their emergency response? They reorganized our entire safety system in under an hour. They improved procedures that have been in place for centuries. They turned a simulation into reality, added a machine intelligence. They treated theoretical problems as actual crises and solved them anyway. This level of commitment and competence suggests Class 1 capabilities. Class 1, the designation reserved for the galaxy's most advanced species. Beings who had mastered space travel, unified their worlds, and contributed significantly to galactic civilization. The humans had been living in space for less than a century. This is madness, protested one of the older species representatives. They have barely left their home system. They still fight wars among themselves. They cannot possibly qualify for Class 1 status. Yet they defeated our best in every challenge we presented, the judge pointed out grimly. What does that say about our own classifications? The terrible implication was clear. If humans could outperform Class 1 species while supposedly being Class 5 primitives, Then the entire galactic hierarchy might be built on false assumptions. Professor Thompson, who had been quietly listening to the debate, finally stood up. The chamber fell silent as the unremarkable-looking historian prepared to speak. "If I may," he said politely, "I think you might be approaching this wrong." Every alien eye turned toward him. The professor adjusted his glasses and looked around the vast chamber with calm curiosity. "You're trying to fit us into your existing categories," he continued. "But maybe the categories themselves are the problem. On Earth, we learned long ago that trying to rank different types of intelligence usually says more about the ranking system than the intelligence being ranked." He gestured toward his fellow humans. "We're good at some things, terrible at others, just like everyone else here. The difference might be that we've learned to work with our limitations instead of trying to overcome them." Dr. Martinez nodded and stood beside him. "Humans succeed because we assume we're going to fail. We plan for things to go wrong. We expect the unexpected. Other species seem to plan for success and get confused when reality doesn't cooperate." Jake Sullivan joined them. "We're not smarter than you folks. We're just more comfortable being confused and making mistakes. When things get chaotic, we don't freeze up. We get creative." The alien representatives stared at this casual analysis of their deepest fears about human capabilities. These three humans were discussing galactic civilization's most advanced species like they were talking about the weather. High Judge Zexthala felt something it had never experienced before: complete uncertainty about what to do next. "So what classification would you suggest for your species?" the judge asked quietly. The humans looked at each other and shrugged. "How about friends?" Jake suggested with a smile. "We're not trying to compete with anyone or prove we're better than anyone else. We just want to help out where we can and learn from everyone we meet." The simple honesty of the response hit the assembled aliens like a shockwave. Here was a species that could defeat their best and brightest, but only wanted to be friends and neighbors. High Judge Zexathala made the only decision possible under the circumstances. "The Council hereby establishes a new classification: human. Population, 1 species. Capabilities, undefined. Status, permanent allies of the Galactic Council." The chamber erupted in surprised sounds from a dozen species, but no one objected. They were all too worried about what might happen if they said no. The galaxy had gained some very unusual new neighbors, and everyone hoped desperately that the humans would continue to like them. Because a species that treated the impossible as routine was not one you wanted to make angry.